Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. September is the Night of Champions month, and today I'll be reviewing the 2008 installment for you folks. Kicking off the show was the WWE Tag Team Championship matchup with the defending WWE Tag Team Champions John Morrison and The Miz taking on Finlay and Hornswoggle. Now, Hornswoggle, being, the midget wrestler that he is, was pretty limited in this matchup, but they made it work. It was a pretty fun opening matchup. I questioned the booking to put this matchup first, because you knew the WWE Tag Team Champions Morrison and Miz were going over. There was some shred of hope for those people that thought that Finlay and Hornswoggle might win the belts, but it was a pretty fun opening matchup. I thought they might go with something else, like the IC title match, when Kingston beat Jericho for the IC title, but nevertheless, this was a good matchup to kick off the show from Morrison, Miz, Finlay, and Hornswoggle. Like I said before, Morrison and Miz go over, still your WWE Tag Team Champions. Up next for the United States Championship, Matt Hardy defending the United States Championship against Chavo Guerrero. Now, Matt Hardy wasn't really feuding with La Familia at the time, Edge, Chavo, Bam Neely, Hawkins, Ryder, etc., etc., but Chavo was a part of La Familia, who was trying to bring gold also to La Familia, the United States Championship to be exact, as Edge was already the World Heavyweight Champion. Hardy and Chavo had a pretty good matchup for what it was. Granted, the crowd didn't really care, because they didn't really have any reason to care. I don't really know how long the feud went on for before this, but it was a good matchup for what it was. Both Hardy and Chavo are good workers, so they're always dependable on to have a good match. So this was an enjoyable matchup for what it was. Just the crowd in attendance didn't really have any incentive to care, considering the fact there wasn't really much story behind this. If the commentators tried to tell the story on commentary that Chavo was trying to bring gold to La Familia, or more gold, I should say, in the form of the U.S. title, then it would have made more sense. But aside from that, though, this match didn't really have much meaning, aside from Matt Hardy coming out still your United States champion. Up next, for the ECW Championship, Mark Henry taking on Big Show and Kane for the ECW title. In a triple threat match, Kane was the ECW champion at the time. Mark Henry was riding a wave of momentum going into the ECW brand, where he had been drafted only a few days before this. Big Show was just kind of really thrown in here because he had nothing else to do when he was on SmackDown. So, in a sense, this was a tri-branded matchup. Big Show was still a part of SmackDown. Henry had just gone to ECW, and Kane was bringing the ECW title to Raw. So, the ECW commentators, I think it was Mike Adamle and Taz at the time, didn't really try to tell the story that Kane was bringing the ECW championship to Raw, and they needed to bring that ECW title back to ECW. Maybe that would have made it more obvious, and also the fact that Henry was a heel, maybe they didn't want to tell that story. But it would have been more logical. It would have added more to the matchup, saying that it was a tri-branded matchup. And all the World Championship matches on this show were tri-branded. Not tri-branded, but were brand versus brand. This had Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. The World Heavyweight title match had Raw and SmackDown. WWE title match had Raw and SmackDown as well. So that really added an extra layer to this event as a whole, specifically this matchup. Like I said before, a lot of people knew going in that Mark Henry would win the belt, considering he was the only guy in this matchup on the ECW brand. But with that being said, though, I thought this was a better than expected matchup. I mean, considering that Big Show, Kane, and Mark Henry were involved, I expected a shittier matchup. It wasn't all that bad. Looking at Wikipedia right now, it was rated 3 out of 10 by someone from the Canadian Online Explorer. And I wouldn't give it a 3. I would give it at least a 4 or 5. It wasn't a terrible matchup. It was a lot better than I thought it would be. And there weren't a lot of botch spots. It was just kind of a slow plotting matchup. But they built it up well. There were a lot of big spots that the people pop for, considering all three of these guys are giants. And they built up to the finish well, with Big Show taking out Kane, I think with a superplex off the top rope. And why that it wouldn't snap the ring, why that wouldn't break the ring, but Big Show, Brock Lesnar suplexing the Big Show would, I have no idea. But anyway, Mark Henry capitalizes, hit the splash for the 1-2-3, your new ECW champion. Like I said before, Mark Henry deserved the title win. Before this, he had never really, believe it or not, having been in the WWE for about 15 years at this point in time, he had never, ever won a WWE title aside from the European Championship. So it was pretty cool to give him the ECW title as one last hurrah, or at least people thought at the time, before he would go on to win the World Heavyweight Championship a few years later. But a good matchup for what it was, better than expected, though that isn't saying much. Up next for the World Tag Team Championships, and I really always enjoyed this angle, and watching it back was really cool, was going in, it was Hardcore Holly and Cody Rhodes, the World Tag Team Champions, taking on an open challenge from Ted DiBiase and a mystery partner. Now, leading into the show, I mean, as a casual fan, I had just started watching WWE at the time, and that's why the show brought back good memories for me personally, because I had just started watching. I remember most of these matches. I had never seen this pay-per-view before watching them on the WWE Network a couple of days ago, but I do remember the results and reading them on WWE.com and stuff like that. But with that being said, though, I do remember Ted DiBiase, teasing that he'd have a mystery partner. I know there were rumors that it'd be a re-debuting David Hart Smith, who was also a second-generation star, a Carlito even. But it seemed kind of obvious, looking back, that it would be Cody Rhodes, considering the fact that they were building up tension between Rhodes and Holly. So, in the course of this matchup, Rhodes and Holly come down to the ring. Out comes DiBiase to some sweet new entrance music. I always loved his theme song, the priceless entrance music. So he comes down. He says that his partner had not been, he wasn't arrived at the arena yet. Wait another 10-15 minutes. They go on with the match anyway, and DiBiase says, "I don't want you, Rhodes. I want Holly. I want him." So Cody Rhodes tags in Hardcore Holly. He turns him around, hits the Silver Spoon DDT, shocks the world. It shocked me when I read the results for the matchup, but for a lot of people, they probably saw it coming. He takes out Hardcore Holly, joins Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase hits the Dream Street, or the side Russian leg sweep, or whatever his finisher was at the time, and gets the 1-2-3, your new World Tag Team Champions. So I don't think this has ever been done before in terms of one partner turning on the other and becoming a World Tag Team Champion for a second time with a different guy facing himself, I guess. It was kind of confusing, but it was pretty innovative, albeit confusing, and the commentators put over the fact that this was the first time in history that a superstar had won tag team title gold on their debut or in their debut match. I know people have won championship gold in their debut before. I know Gail Kim won the women's championship in her in-ring debut, but I don't think ever has someone won the world tag team titles on their debut, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, a good matchup. Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase, your new World Tag Team Champions, and this would start the many multi-year rivalry and storyline with DiBiase and Rhodes, a part of Legacy, and 3 years later, they would also face off for the Intercontinental Championship at Night of Champions 2011. So I'll be reviewing that show in a couple of weeks. But with that being said, though, I always love this angle. Like I said before, a lot of people probably just saw this coming. But it was really a turning point in the career for Cody Rhodes. And that as a babyface, he was really bland. He really just came off as like an enhancement talent kind of guy. He had the Dusty Rhodes name. He had the last name of his father. But aside from that, he was a talented dude. But he never really showed any real potential outside of a tag team with Hardcore Holly. So in turning heel, he was able to show a lot more personality, learn from the best in Randy Orton, a part of Legacy, for the next 2 years, and like I said before, would flourish in one of the best heels in recent years before going back babyface in 2013. So with that being said, I love this moment for Cody Rhodes. I would always attribute this as one of the monumental moments in the career of Cody Rhodes, that it really was a turning point for him. Ted DiBiase, it's really a shame for him, and I'll talk about him in upcoming videos when I review other Night of Champions events. But for Ted DiBiase, it was really just a swing and a miss. I thought he had a lot of potential that was really untapped for a lot of reasons. But with that being said, though, like I said, I'll get to that in other videos. But anyway, I always enjoy this angle of DiBiase and Rhodes taking the World Tag Team titles from Hardcore Holly. And I believe this would also be Hardcore Holly's last WWE matchup. I don't think he was ever utilized on WWE TV after this matchup. And I always wondered why. I thought Hardcore Holly would come back looking for vengeance or something like that, trying to find a new World Tag Team title partner to rival Team Priceless, but it never came to fruition. He was released in January of 2009, about 6 or 7 months later, so that was that. Up next, for the Intercontinental Championship, Chris Jericho, who was the IC champion at the time, issuing an open challenge for his title. Now, because this was a Night of Champions, they didn't have a IC title set in stone format at this point in time. Like I said, I had just started watching, so I didn't really think of him defending against Shawn Michaels, who he had just turned heel on a couple of weeks earlier. Maybe some people were hoping for that matchup at Night of Champions, Jericho versus Michaels, for the prestigious Intercontinental Championship, which would have been an awesome feud. It wasn't one of the most amazing feud in years, but the fact that had it been over the Intercontinental Championship would have made that title mean that much more. And it was still prestigious at the time, definitely not as irrelevant as it is today. But even so, though, Shawn Michaels was out with an eye injury at the time, which left him out of this contest. But opening or answering the open challenge was Kofi Kingston, who had just been drafted to the Raw brand a couple days earlier in the WWE Supplemental 2008 draft. Kofi Kingston had just debuted in WWE a couple months earlier, so when he came out, people were like, cool, it's Kofi Kingston, he'll probably be beat by Jericho, whatever. So they had a very nice matchup, and they've had a number of great matches over the course of the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But even so, though, Jericho and Kingston always work well together. This was their first ever one-on-one matchup. Kingston would take the fight to Jericho, but it wasn't until Shawn Michaels, who to a big pop appeared out of the crowd, sweet chin music, or delivered a super kick to Lance Cade at ringside. Now, Lance Cade was the real-life protege of Shawn Michaels. I believe he went to his wrestling school. But I really like the fact that they tied that into the feud with Jericho, and they made Lance Cade the protege of Y2J. I always thought that was awesome. It really resurrected the career of Lance Cade after his split with Trevor Murdoch. So, and I always loved that pairing, and it was really sad when they broke them up a couple of months later due to Lance Cade's, I think he had departure from the WWE, and he would eventually pass, RIP. But even so, though, Lance Cade ends up getting super kicked by Shawn Michaels at ringside to a big pop. Kofi Kingston takes advantage, hits a Trouble in Paradise, 1, 2, 3, your new Intercontinental Champion. So a big match for Kofi Kingston, in that this was his first singles title victory, would launch a career in Kingston as a mid-card guy for life, as a lot of people would say. But even still, a very good matchup from Kofi Kingston and Chris Jericho. My computer just went out here for a second. I'm going to try to bring it back up in terms of the results of this pay-per-view. Just 1 second. But yeah, anyway, Jericho and Shawn Michaels, I talked about the feud before, and that it was one of the best feuds that WWE had done in a very, very long time. I always enjoyed all the stuff that they did. This really wasn't the launching point of this feud. It really all started when Jericho turned on Shawn Michaels. But it was really a turning point in that Kofi Kingston would take the title off of Jericho, allowing that feud to go on with that title being on the line. So I apologize for the brief shortcut there. My results came back online. My computer fell asleep, you stupid son of a bitch. Anyway, we go on to the Women's Championship matchup. Mickie James defending against Katie Lee Burchill. Now, Katie Lee Burchill, actually, this is a matchup that TNA did a couple of years later. Burchill as Winter, Mickie James as herself. But this is really where this feud all started. Katie Lee had beaten Mickie James a couple of times in tag team action before this matchup. It really was a cookie-cutter Divas feud. People didn't really have any reason to care, and they didn't. It only went about 6 minutes. It was a well-wrestled matchup, but for the most part, a lot of people just did not care because Katie Lee Burchill, they had really no reason to care about her as a competitor. Mickie James was she was a great wrestler, but at the time, there was really nothing interesting about her character specifically. But that being said, though, they had a good matchup. They'd have other good matches in TNA a couple of years later over the Knockouts Championship. But, yeah, Mickie James still your women's champion. Really not much more to say other than that. World Heavyweight Championship match time. Edge taking on Batista in a rematch from the 2007 Night of Champions. Something I really wish they talked about on commentary, which they did not. They really missed the boat on that one, and that Edge and Batista had a long-running feud. And Edge did say in the promo, going into this matchup in the video package, that Batista was never able to defeat him in a World Heavyweight Championship matchup. So I was glad they made mention of that, but other than that, though, they never really talked about how they had faced off at that same exact event 1 year prior. But nevertheless, good matchup from Edge and Batista. I would hardly call it their best outing. I was a bit bored by this match, other than as opposed to their 07 match, Vengeance Night of Champions. I was probably more entertained by that match than I was this one. But still a solid match from Edge and Batista. Batista would come this close to winning the World Heavyweight Championship before interference from La Familia and Vicky Guerrero, who would take a vicious military press from Batista over the top rope and onto La Familia. So major respect, major props to her for taking that bump. Edge would take advantage. Chavo Guerrero was the special guest referee. Edge, after hitting Batista with the big gold belt, got the 1, 2, 3, steal your World Heavyweight Champion. He would end up dropping the belt the next night anyway to CM Punk, Mr. Money in the Bank, which they did tease on this show. But even still, a good match from Edge and Batista, but I would hardly call it their best outing together. They had a lot better matches on SmackDown about a year prior, but even still, though, a solid match from Edge and Batista on this show. We get to the main event, Triple H versus John Cena for the WWE Championship in a rematch from WrestleMania 22. Like I said before, they didn't really touch upon the history between Edge and Batista all that much. And some other matches on this show, I really wish they went into some of the history. But with this match, they really delved into the fact that H and John Cena had a matchup at WrestleMania 22 for the WWE title, their first and only up to this point singles match against each other, where John Cena emerged victorious in defending successfully his WWE Championship against the Game. So going into this matchup, Triple H was hell-bent on determined on proving to John Cena that he can indeed beat him. And also, like the World Heavyweight Championship matchup, this was a brand versus brand matchup. Triple H had taken the WWE Championship with him to SmackDown. So maybe some people thought that John Cena would win here and that he could bring the WWE title back to Raw and they can keep the World Heavyweight Championship on SmackDown. But that would prove not to be the case. After a very good matchup from Triple H and John Cena, Triple H would emerge victorious, bringing the score to 1-1 between Triple H and John Cena, still your WWE Champion, the Game. And I think they would have a few more matches after this before Triple H became kind of a part-timer. I know they had a match in 2009, or they had two matches in 2009, and maybe one before the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in 2010, but aside from that, I can't remember them facing off any other time before these, after this anyway. But a very good match. It went about 20 minutes, so they got a lot of great in-ring time. Most of it was kind of, building it up. It was solid action, really nothing exciting. But they really picked up the pace down the stretch with the kick out of the finishers and a lot of the near falls. They captured the crowd's attention. Triple H, in the end, went over clean. A nice clean win for the Game over John Cena, which was rare at the time and still is to this day, to successfully retain the Intercontinental title, the WWE Championship. So that's how we go off the show. Triple H, still your WWE Champion. And a weird note here, like I said in my 07 review, they heavily focused on Mr. McMahon being his death at the time, at Night of Champions 07, and the whole limo explosion, all that kind of bullshit. Year later, not that this show is as, Mr. McMahon heavy, but they still did talk about the fact that McMahon had been taken out by the $1 Million Mania set that week on Raw, or 6 days prior to this show. Like I said, they didn't really focus on that all that much as much as they did for the 07 show, which I was happy about because that show was far too engrossed in the whole McMahon bullshit, and with what would happen with Benoit the next day or that weekend was really just in bad taste. It was not good timing. Even if the Benoit shit didn't happen, even if the Benoit tragedy did not occur, that's still something that you don't do. It was just in really bad taste. I know it was an intriguing angle for many, but it was really something that you should not do. But anyway, though, overall, I thought this was a solid show. I would say it's a bit more exciting than the 07 edition because there were a lot more title changes on this show than there were at the other one. But on this show, we crowned a new ECW champion, World Tag Team Champions, and Intercontinental Champion. One thing that kind of bothered me about this show was the lineup. I mean, I love all the matches, but I'm talking about in terms of match order. I think it could have benefited from the Intercontinental Championship match with Jericho losing to Kofi Kingston to win the belt. That matchup could have kicked off the show, because if you really look at it, based off the review that I just did, and I'm talking about the actual match order here, 3 title changes occurred in a row. So after that, we had a new ECW champion, World Tag Team Champions, and IC champion, all in a row. Then after that, we would have the women's title match, would die to death after the very fun IC title angle. And the 2 world title matches weren't as exciting. I mean, people were still intrigued to see which brand would take home each respective world title, but they probably could have spaced out the title changes a bit better as opposed to doing all 3 in a row. I mean, you could do 2 in a row, that's okay, but to do 3 in a row was a bit much, considering the fact that no other matches on the show featured title changes. But, that being said, though, I really enjoyed the action on this show. There weren't many blockbuster matches, just kind of some newsworthy things. Triple H and John Cena would call a very good match, so go out of your way to check out that. Their WrestleMania 22 rematch. The whole thing with Kofi Kingston, Jericho, Shawn Michaels, Lance Cade, I thought was great. Go back and check that out. It was kind of the launching pad for Kofi Kingston's career as a singles competitor. And, the World Tag Team title stuff, too, I thought was also good. But everything else was just kind of substantial filler, even though it wasn't really all that bad. So, in terms of a replay verdict here, I would not suggest going out of your way to watch the show as opposed to some of the other shows that I reviewed. There have been better Night of Champions pay-per-views. This was solid. I'll give it that much. It wasn't great. I thought it was going to be better than it actually was. I'm not going to say just for that reason to not watch it. But based off all the matches, the results, the in-ring action, there weren't really any stellar matches that you should go out of your way to see, aside from the main event between Triple H and John Cena. But if you don't like either guy, then you're just kind of wasting your time watching that matchup. But that's kind of self-explanatory. That's kind of common sense. But anyway, though, I wouldn't really say you need to go out of your way to watch this pay-per-view. It was a solid show, but it wasn't really anything monumental or blockbuster, because like I said before, there have been better Night of Champions shows aside from this one. So, with that being said, thanks for watching, folks. Always appreciate it. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. My next WrestleRant video will take place in a couple more days. And like I said before, I'll be reviewing Night of Champions events all over the course of the next few weeks. I'll be reviewing the 2009 installment of Night of Champions, so stay tuned for that. With that being said, once again, thanks for watching, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch you guys down the road.